Here are 10 players that you need to trade away before the draft right now.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is the Fantasy Football Hall of Famer, Michael Fabiano. And it's a Wednesday show. So, of course, former NFL scout Matt Williamson is here. And we are discussing the 10 players that you need to trade away in your Dynasty leagues right now before the NFL draft. And, Fabs, I want to start at the running back position. Who is a running back for you that you think you need to get out on now before the backfield becomes a little bit more crowded?
I'm going to sell high on Bhyshul Tuten right now. You know, the Jaguars obviously lost Travis Etienne, who went to the Saints, and they did sign Chris Rodriguez as a free agent, and they also have LaQuinton Allen Jr. on the roster, but they have 11 picks in the draft, and they have 5 in the top 125. So I would not be surprised if the Jaguars went out and added another running back into this mix. And you know how we are in the fantasy world. We love rookies. These young guys come in and we all get gaga over them. And so almost any running back within the first 4 rounds that might potentially get drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars will ultimately all of a sudden become everyone's favorite Jaguars running back in fantasy football. Not sure who that might be. And even if they don't draft a running back, I just don't see Tuten as like that guy. I think he's going to share the workload with Rodriguez and Allen. So I know there's a lot of hype over him. He's a target in Dynasty because he's young. He's only entering his second NFL season. He's going to be in an offense that scored a lot of points last year. They have a ton of talent. Etienne had one of his best seasons in this offense under Liam Cohen. I just am very concerned that Tuten is not going to see close to the kind of role that Etienne saw last year. And he may not even be guaranteed to start. So I would be trying to ship him out right now.
What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think that's a good one because just taking a step further with the Jacksonville backfield, I think his counterparts are more accomplished in pass protection and the pass game overall. You know, so I'm not sure Tuten's going to be even out there on third downs, even if they don't do anything. I mean, if they don't even add anybody to the backfield, I think his, high velocity or, his high production spots, third downs could be hindered for sure.
And the way that I look at this draft is it's not the best running back draft we've ever seen. In fact, I'm looking at Dane Brugler's board right now, and he only has 3 running backs that have first, second, or third round grades. It's pretty rough. But I also don't think James Gladstone, the Jacksonville GM, is necessarily going to draft one early. Like, to me, I just think he's going to be one of these GMs that just throws a early day 3 pick at the running back position every year and cycles these guys in and out. And honestly, that's where this draft is really, really strong. Maybe it's an Emmett Johnson or a Katron Allen or a Jonah Coleman. Any one of those guys that if they're picked by Jacksonville are instantly going to decrease Tuten's value. So I'm with you, Fabs. Like, if you can get out now on Tuten, I think I would do that.
And of the players you mentioned, I think if they did end up in Jacksonville, we'd all think that would be the most attractive option. And that says a lot about Tuten in terms of where we think he might be as a fantasy asset.
Yes. Yeah. All right, Matt, who else do you have at the running back position that you are trading away?
I have 2 that I think are similar to Fabs. Everyone talks about a running back's going to end up in Seattle. And that's probably true. There's probably some other teams that are more obvious landing spots than Jacksonville, Washington, and Houston. But I think I'm getting out on the Washington and Houston backfields now. Love could end up in Washington and then just destroys everybody's value. That one's, pretty obvious. But is Bill really that great a player? I mean, he's okay. The hype I thought was always a little higher than the true value. And Montgomery, they gave up more than I expected for, and he might have a fine year, but he's got a lot of wear and tear on his tires, and he's gotten beat up over the years. And what if either one of those teams just throws a third-round running back in the mix? I don't think, you might get something for Bill or Montgomery at this point.
And I think the way to cash in on these running backs, because like someone like Montgomery doesn't have a ton of dynasty value. He's RB29. But I think what you do is you go to a team that has a running back need in your dynasty leagues and be like, hey, this is not a good running back class. None of these guys are going to be more talented than David Montgomery after Jeremiah Love. Why don't you just trade for Montgomery now? And I think that's how you get out of this if you can. Now, you might need to take 90 cents on the dollar, but honestly, I think because there's a chance that we get to, 2.5 weeks from now and Montgomery's ceiling or value is just through the floor after they draft yet another running back.
And by the way, they've basically had the worst running game in the league for 2 or 3 years running. Do we all of a sudden think it's going to be the best?
I don't think so. Fabs, what do you think about the Houston backfield and the Washington backfield?
So me, I mean, David Montgomery is actually a friend and I'm rooting for him. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for him. And I still think he's got a little bit left in the tank. I kind of compared that decision to go out and trade for him to Joe Mixon, who was also towards the end of his career when he was traded away from Cincinnati and ended up having some success in Houston. I hope David has the same sort of success. I don't know that Houston's going to invest in a running back after drafting Woody Marks last year. But also I do wonder, how much can you get from David right now in a dynasty league? There could be some teams out there that need a running back, want a veteran, maybe for a year or two. So that could be a potential flip. Washington, to me, though, it all hinges on Jeremiah Love, because Marcus and I have had this conversation. I don't hate Rachaad White. I don't hate him as a fantasy asset. He's a young running back. And again, he's probably got a soft spot for me because he helped me win a league a couple of years ago when it was like in the top 5 in running back fantasy points. But Washington right now, their depth chart, I mean, you've got White atop that depth chart. They signed Jerome Ford. They've got Bill. I don't even know if Bill is their second running back. He may be third. Jeremy McNichols, I think, is still there. If Jeremiah Love is drafted by Washington, then forget about it. I mean, none of these guys are going to have any dynasty value whatsoever because Love is going to be the dude. If Love gets drafted by Tennessee, for example, I don't know that Arizona is going to draft him. I think maybe Arizona would probably want to trade out of that spot. So Tennessee would be the biggest threat unless somebody else moved up to get Jeremiah Love. But if Love is gone, could Washington still draft a running back at some point over, the next couple of days? Sure. But will they be any better than Rachaad White at the top? I'm not sure about that. And even so, if it's a Jonah Coleman, for example, he's kind of a bowling ball bruiser type of back. They would maybe even just pair with a Rachaad White, and Rachaad White would still end up being the starter there in Washington. So Washington to me is a bit tough. I don't know if I want to move any assets right now, but if you're bullish and you believe that Love's going to Washington and Matt's onto something there, you may want to flip Bill and potentially Rachaad White. But if you don't, Rachaad White could end up being a top 20 running back in fantasy next season, just based on his pass catching chops alone.
I got one more running back I just want to mention. And honestly, Matt mentioned it a little bit, but Zach Charbonnet, RB26, there's just no way that Seattle doesn't draft a running back at some point. I think it's probably more likely going to be like middle of day 2. Maybe it's that second round pick. Maybe it's Jadarian Price. But, man, I just have a hard time seeing any way that Zach Charbonnet's value doesn't go down after the draft. And even if it's like an early day 3 running back, I think that's going to be enough to spook people. With him being valued as like a top 90 player right now, I think I would get out as soon as possible.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was valued that high because he's also coming off a major injury late in the year.
And he's the final year of his contract.
Yeah, and hypothetical, Love does go to Tennessee. Well, then maybe they trade for Pollard. They're going to add something.
That's my belief. They're going to add something. There's just no way when we're doing this podcast a month from now, Zach Charbonnet is going to be valued as a top 26 dynasty running back, and that's why you should move him.
I never thought
let's talk about some
best day either.
Yeah,
he's fine.
He's a fine player.
Yeah.
Most of his value came at scoring touchdowns, and that's just, you can't bank all your fantasy value on scoring touchdowns. All right, let's talk about some receivers that you should be trading away right now. We'll get to that next. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Financial stress is something that a lot of people are carrying right now. And it's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is, struggling with money doesn't mean that you failed. Sometimes it just means that you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something that I've thought about, how easy it is to put pressure on yourself financially without really talking about it. That stress that comes with trying to figure everything out on your own, the expectations you can feel trying to have everything together, and how that pressure can spill into other areas of your life. Therapy isn't about financial advice, but it is about working through the stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. And with over 30,000 licensed therapists and over 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. So when life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat with me and several other listeners of the show. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedondynasty.supercast.com. All right, Matt, let's start with you. Who are some receivers that you are trading away before the NFL draft?
I have two. You want them both?
Yeah, let's give them to me.
DK Metcalf for my hometown team. I don't think him and Rodgers really are a good marriage. And I know that's only one more year probably, but Metcalf's getting up in age. I absolutely think with one of the first two picks the Steelers have, they will draft a receiver. And even if they happen not to draft a receiver in round one, I bet they draft two in this entire draft. There's two roster spots available for wideouts on the Steelers roster right now, and I think they're going to come via the draft. And I think Pittman's a little bit more Rodgers friendly. The other one is Xavier Worthy.
Let me stop real quick on that one.
Yeah, please.
So Pittsburgh actually signed Michael Pittman to a contract extension, but for all intents and purposes, it's really a 1-year deal, and then we'll see, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I agree with you, you look at every single one of these mock drafts, and all of them have Pittsburgh drafting a receiver at 21. I think you're the only one out there trying to mock an offensive tackle to them at 21. So I appreciate the effort. I think it's going to happen, right? Whether it's Omar Cooper, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, I think they're going to add somebody. And if that's the case, Metcalf's value falls, Pittman's value falls. I kind of think the most valuable receiver on this offense will be whoever Pittsburgh drafts. So I'm with you on Metcalf.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I don't think Freiermuth or Washington's role are going to go away. And we also know Rodgers loves dumping at the running backs too. So, how big a piece of pie are we even talking about here? The other one, I think you're just going to take an L on if you drafted him in Xavier Worthy. I just don't see it. I don't know that he can get off press coverage at his size. I think he gets pushed around at this level. I think they need a Denzel Boston or somebody like that at the end of first round that can do some of the dirty work. I just don't love Worthy's game, and I think there's big competition coming very soon.
Fabs, what do you think? We'll start with Xavier Worthy. What do you think on trading away Xavier Worthy, who's all the way down to wide receiver 55 on Dynasty League football?
When he came out, I wasn't real keen on him, because of the situation in Kansas City, Rashee Rice. And obviously a lot of it has to do whether or not Rashee Rice can actually keep his nose clean throughout the course of his time in Kansas City, however long that might be. But I also think
we should mention though that the NFL came out and said that they are not that their investigation is complete. There's no suspension coming.
Doesn't mean he won't do something else stupid, but I mean, you never know.
Correct. There is that knuckleheadedness factor that you have to, but I think for people that were maybe a little spooked that he could be, suspended, cut, traded here before week one. I think Matt and I did a show 2 weeks ago. We talked about maybe trading for Rashee Rice right now. Mm-hmm. I think if you did that, you're probably looking pretty smart.
So he's not going to be the number one. They brought in Kenneth Walker. Travis Kelce's still on the roster. And you and I have talked about how I would love to see them go out and maybe even draft Kenyon Sadiq. That would be awesome to be the new Travis Kelce in that offense for many years to come. So I'm on board with jettisoning Worthy, who was only really good in the second half of the season 2 years ago, where he was unbelievable in the Super Bowl. Last year, he was a massive disappointment. And I was big on DK Metcalf. I liked him last year. There were games where he was very good. There was games where he stunk. And after the whole dumb incident with the fan and the Steelers bringing in Pittman and potentially drafting a wide receiver, I agree with Matt. I'm probably out on DK as well.
I struggle, Matt, with Xavier Worthy because I am a believer in the talent, and he's only 22. I mean, there's several receivers in this class that are older than he is, but at the same time, he's not been the most durable player. It feels like his role is very much defined in this offense, and you got Patrick Mahomes coming off a torn ACL. The offensive line's pretty shaky. I get all the concerns, but I also wonder, like, are you getting a lot of value in him at wide receiver 55, or are you better off just holding on to him and hoping that the Chiefs don't draft anybody early?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get value out of him, especially what you put into him in your rookie drafts 2 years ago or whatever it was. But I'm getting out now while I can still get something. I'm just not a believer.
Yeah. Fabs, who do you have at receiver?
I've got Davante Adams, and it was probably a year ago where you should have traded him, but it was so damn hard because he was so good, right? I mean, he had 14 touchdowns last year, which was the most in the NFL among wide receivers. And he still looks like a guy who can put up top 10, top 12 numbers among fantasy wide receivers. But he's 33. And the Rams reportedly almost traded him this offseason. And so I wonder if they were trying to get ahead of the cliff that may be coming. And you also see some wide receivers mocked to the Rams, like Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if this is going to be Adams's last good year in the NFL. Now, if he stays with the Rams, which it looks like he will, I still think he's a very good wide receiver too in fantasy. So there still might be a team in your dynasty league out there that feels like they're one good wide receiver away from maybe taking home a title. And so that's the team you go after, and you try and see if you can flip a Davante Adams for a draft pick or maybe another player. He still has value right now, but the age, and when you read the tea leaves of the Rams trying to put Davante Adams in a trade package and the Rams looking to maybe draft Lemon or Tyson or whoever they have that's at the top of their wide receiver depth chart in terms of the rookies, and I'm guessing they're not going to get Carnell Tate. I'm just reading the tea leaves here, and I'm thinking, I don't know how much longer Adams has in Los Angeles, and this may be his last season. So let's try and get something for him now before the value completely tanks.
And here are a couple of receivers that are currently being drafted behind Davante Adams in terms of ADP: Denzel Boston, Christian Watson, Jordan Addison, Travis Hunter, Jaden Higgins, Michael Wilson, Omar Cooper, Wan'Dale Robinson, Matthew Golden. I would prefer all of those guys over Davante Adams. So if you can trade Adams for any one of those guys, and Matt, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I think I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, most of those names for sure. I'd have to hear them again. But what stood out to me were the several rookies you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this better than me, Marcus, but I assume Cooper and some of those receivers you mentioned that are rookies are probably going in the middle of the first round of rookie drafts.
Yeah, so right now it looks like Denzel Boston is being drafted about 107. Omar Cooper's 109. If you can trade Adams for a mid to late first round pick, I think I'd do that in a heartbeat as well.
Yeah, that just doesn't seem like that adds up, though. I don't know who's giving me 1.7 for Adams.
Maybe not, and maybe we'll start to see these receivers creep up a little bit more in terms of their value. But if you can flip them for like a Jordan Addison, again, I know you're not the biggest fan of Jordan Addison, but
I don't trust him either. But yeah,
but he's 10 years younger, right?
Right. But a lot of those names you mentioned to me are more valuable than Addison.
Michael Wilson, for example, in Arizona.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. And at least Addison won't have JJ throwing him the football anymore.
Every episode, got to get a JJ McCarthy dig in. All right, let's talk about some quarterbacks and tight ends that you should be trading away. We'll get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Matt, let's go over to quarterbacks and tight ends. Who are some players that you're trying to trade away at these positions?
Yeah, I had a harder time with this one. I only came up with one name. I came up with Gadsden from the Chargers. I just think some sort of pass catcher is going to be added to this mix. Whole new offensive coordinator. I kind of think he's somewhat of a flash in the pan. Nice story, but I don't think he's a special player. I think you get something for him at his age. A lot of change here. I still think they want to run the football first and foremost. It is a team run by Harbaugh. So I'm moving him if I can.
Right now, he's being valued as tight end 10 over on Dynasty League Football, 95th overall. Some of the tight ends that are going behind him, George Kittle, Jake Ferguson, Isaiah Likely, Eli Stowers, Dalton Kincaid. And I probably would just rather have most of those guys. I also won't be surprised, Matt, like if we see them sign a Jonnu Smith or Darren Waller, like after the draft, and that just tanks his value.
Yeah, and those guys aren't the biggest obstacles ever, but they might get more snaps than him right off the bat.
And it's just one more name.
Yeah, Jonnu also had his best season in Miami under McDaniel.
Yeah. A guy like Kincaid, I'd rather have if I could get.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
What about for you, Fabs?
Yeah, I'm going to go Mark Andrews because right now his stock is on the rise. You and I have talked about it, Marcus. He's really higher than I think he should be based on ADP. He's entering his age 31 year. And I know that Isaiah Likely's in New York now. So that means that, Mark Andrews is going to get more playing time and he's going to get more opportunities and he's got a rapport with Lamar Jackson. That's what you sell to someone who might want a tight end. Because I would not be shocked if the Ravens drafted either Sadiq or Eli Stowers coming up at the end of the month. I really would not. You know, Sadiq is a guy, I love him. I mean, this dude's an absolute freak, and he would be the perfect heir apparent to Mark Andrews in Baltimore. And not for nothing, Eli Stowers has got a lot of upside as well. A guy that we've talked about. We've mentioned him on the podcast earlier in the week, Marcus and I did. He reminds me a lot of like an Evan Ingram type. He would potentially also be there where the Ravens draft in round 2. You could go out and get him, and he would be the heir apparent. Their depth chart behind Mark Andrews right now at tight end is not really all that impressive. So I think they're going to add somebody. And if they add one of these two guys, Mark Andrews' stock is going to fall back to what it was last year when Likely was on the roster. I'm just trying to get, and like Andrews, like Adams, I think Andrews maybe it would have been better to trade him last year, but now I think is the last chance you're going to get to have any kind of value for him because I'm convinced Baltimore is drafting a tight end. And if they do, then you're going to get very little for Mark Andrews.
Fabs, even take it a step further. Like if one of those two land in Baltimore, ouch, that really hurts Andrews. But this is such a deep tight end draft. I mean, they invited the most tight ends ever in combine history. And we've seen this team in multiple occasions draft 2 tight ends in the same draft. I mean, even if they don't get one of the big 2, what if they end up with Trigg, Roush, Delp, Claire, Klein, on and on and on? I mean, there's going to be competition of young guys that are good.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And Baltimore is not done adding pass catchers because they haven't done anything yet to this point because they lost Likely. DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be back. They have a need for pass catchers, and so they've got to fill that need. And I think one of those players in the draft will be a tight end, whether it's one of the top 2 guys or, Matt, as you mentioned, 3, 4, 5, a guy like Trigg, anybody who comes in there that's got any kind of resume and that any of the NFL scouts and the prospects have really come out and said, this kid's got some upside at the next level, that's going to cut Mark Andrews' value potentially off of the knees, especially in Dynasty.
And Matt, I was looking this morning at Dane Brugler's draft guide. Go check it out. It's over on The Athletic. He has 30 tight ends that have draftable grades in this class.
That's crazy.
30. Yeah. That is
30.
wild.
Wow.
Yeah, and I should also mention he's got 10 that have top 4 round grades, and I believe he has 7 inside his top 100. So I think there's a lot of these tight ends right now, over on Dynasty League Football that could be in trouble. That guys that are being ranked anywhere from like tight end 10 to tight end 20 that could see a significant drop in value. And I'm even looking at guys like Brenton Strange in Jacksonville. Like we just assume that he's going to be the starter there. I wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville drafts a 4th round tight end like Justin Jolly or Michael Trigg or something like that. So it's a really dangerous time for these borderline tight ends. And that's why if you don't have one of the top 5 or 6 guys, I would be trying to move as many of these guys as possible.
Yeah. And we know what's going to happen is the war rooms around the league are going to see this the same way of we don't have a perceived tight end need, but we're also seeing more and more tight ends on the field at once. And I got a 3rd or 4th round grade on this dude, and he's still there in the 5th or 6th round.
Bingo.
I'm just going to take him.
And there's some tight ends right now based on ADP data that I don't understand how they're behind Mark Andrews. Like Eli Stowers. I mean, we talked about him. There's no way I'd have him behind Mark Andrews. Terrence Ferguson, who Marcus and I both really, really like. I don't like that they brought back Higbee, but I'd rather have him. I'd rather have Kincaid, although he's been a disappointment. So again, intoxicated ADP data also makes me think maybe I could get more from Mark Andrews than I think I can, because right now he's a borderline tight end 1 based on this data.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you get all of the latest episodes. And on Thursday's show, we're going to answer your Twitter questions, so make sure that you send them into us. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Dynasty ad-free plus members-only Discord access and so much more. Head over to lockedondynasty.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. Follow Matt on Twitter at Williamson NFL. You can follow Fabs at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.